Welcome to the most incredible marketing show ever. The show where each week a panel of respected marketing strategists, all trained and certified by the legendary Dan Kennedy, share their wisdom, experience, strategies, and insights on how to use Dan Kennedy's philosophy on business and marketing in any type of business, and that you can apply to your business immediately. Here's your host, Craig Valine.
Hey, welcome to the most incredible marketing show ever. I'm your host, Craig Valine. And in this episode today, we're going to address a topic we talked about last week, I should say, right? About Dan Kennedy's program called The Phenomenon. And the basis of the phenomenon is achieve more in the next 12 months than you have in the previous 12 years. And so last episode, we talked about chief trigger number 1, which was you need to take action on your ideas and intentions. And today we're going to talk about chief trigger number 2. You need to radically change your preconceived and ingrained beliefs about your own limitations, about fast versus slow, and about money. So, Mark, you were the one who recommended this topic for February, for our episodes in February. Talk about that chief trigger.
Well, I believe that, we all kind of, I could speak for myself. I've had a lot of things to overcome preconceived notions, beliefs about speed. We've all been trained, as Ben talked about in the last episode. The Tortoise and the Hare book was written for the tortoise market. We've been just trained that somehow we have to climb some ladder and earn the right to do this or that, and to earn whatever it is, or to earn the right to charge. And a lot of it's just a bunch of BS. So I just thought this topic was really important.
Yeah. How about you, Mike? What's your take on this topic, on this trigger?
Yeah, I mean, it's real for sure. And no matter who you're talking about, whether it's Elon Musk, the richest guy in the world, or just an average, local business owner, everyone has self-imposed limitations, mind trash, whatever it might be. So it really is one of the key things that have to be, it has to be addressed and focused on and figured out.
Yeah. Hey, Rochelle, we've had some good conversations together. What's some of the limitations that you've experienced either with yourself or with your clients?
Gosh, of thinking that it takes, the same amount of time to make 3,000 than it does to make 30,000, right? Like it's easier to make 30,000 in a day than it is to make 30,000 in a year. And so many people get this all screwed up, and because they've only seen one way to make money. I think that there's like 3 things that are so important about money and about your money mindset that I learned from Dan. One is that you have to respect money. So it's, when you walk past a penny, you don't walk over it, you pick up the freaking penny, right? Because where you put this money, where you have this money makes a huge, huge difference. I think that all of us have, some type of thing on our wall. I have $1 in my purse that I honor and respect money. I'm happy to pay when I pay things out. Money has an energy, was something I learned from Dan, that it's when you go to dinner and everybody's cutting up the bill, right? And well, you had 2 drinks, and well, you had like, that just drives me freaking bananas. It's like, no, just pay it. Like everybody just pay it, and let's move on so that we can get past these money beliefs. But money beliefs come from how our parents acted, how they taught us how to spend. If like things were tight at our home growing up, we end up with it being tight when we go into business, and all of these things affect the entrepreneur in their spending and their limitations. And here's my last point on it. Everybody's got a money limit. And I said, you can tell it when you go into Costco, right? Like anything under $500 is my money limit, and I'm just buying it. Doesn't matter. Anything under $500, it's the salad spinner to the air fryer to the whatever it is. If it's under 500, it's going in my bucket. Some people it's under 100. Some people it's 50. Some people it's 10,000. You just got to figure out like what's your money limit, and then from there you can make it happen.
Awesome. Dan Cricks, what are some of the limitations that people put on themselves when they're when they're working with us or with Dan or anybody like us, what are the things that prevent them from achieving their goals?
Well, Rochelle kind of touched on it a little bit. You have those things that got ingrained in you as you grow up. And I grew up very poor, so I kind of watched every penny, and probably the person who helped me get past that the most was Dan Kennedy, and I remember the turning point when not long after I'd become an info marketer, I had an attorney that was in a networking group with me who asked me to help him with his marketing. And so I got lucky, and I was talking with Dan one-on-one, and I told him, and I said, I don't know if I really want to do this. They have all these rules about marketing to attorney groups, and I don't even know if I want to do this. I said, but, the guy asked me, so I want to do it. What do you think? And he says, here's the only way you're going to get his respect. He said, charge him more than he charges per hour. And I thought, well, great, because I don't want the job anyway, right? I'm thinking I'm going to give him this number, and he's going to say no, and we're all going to be happy except him. Well, so when we got together, I laid it out, and I said, here it is, and his reaction was, wow, you charge more than I do. And I was very proud of myself, because Dan didn't even tell me this. I said, that's because I'm worth more than you are. And again, he looked at me, and I said, without somebody like me, you're going to be sitting there not billing any hours. And lo and behold, he came on as a client. Okay. And then I was like, oh shit, now what do I do? But sound like you, Rochelle. I ended up putting a program together for him that was tremendously success, and it went against the traditional beliefs of how we would do things. Okay. And we put it into place. And when the marketing first came out, within hours, he called me up and said, we got to stop this. We got to shut this down. I said, why? What's the matter? He goes, a lot of other attorneys are calling me up complaining, saying you can't do that. I said, that tells us we hit a home run. They are concerned about it. And he went from just trying to get a practice established to, in a little over a year, had to bring on a partner to handle all the work.
Yeah.
Now that got me past my money belief, and it got him past the beliefs about doing things differently.
Yeah, that's one of Rochelle and you all mentioned family beliefs, but there are industry norms that restrict behavior. So, Mike, talk about that. Have you experienced that with clients or with yourself about people say we can't do that in our business, but it worked anyway?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always sort of that herd mentality when you're in a specific niche, whether you realize it or not. So, if everyone else is doing the same thing, you tend to, do the same thing as, the norm. And I think that's one of the big Kennedy lessons I've learned over the years, which is, I don't know if he necessarily came up with it, but the saying, well, if everyone's doing, going this way, you go the opposite way. But yeah, I think absolutely, anyone listening to this that works in a specific, industry or niche where they can only charge $100 an hour or whatever it might be, you do yourself a lot of favor if you could, work on breaking that out and really trying to figure out why is that, and it really often comes down to value. To Dan Crick's point, if you can describe the value and illustrate the value you show, and and why that's going to directly affect the person you're just talking with, chances are you can quickly break out of that mental barrier.
Yeah, if we have Seinfeld fans, it's doing a Costanza. Doing the complete opposite of what right? That example. I remember the example of Dan being confronted by a weight loss company CEO telling me, "Hey, I just realized we're paying you more than I do, and I'm the CEO of the company." And Dan saying something similar to Dan Crick's. It's like, it's because I'm worth more because I make the money here. I'm bringing in the money. So, but Becky, my business is different. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, so we've all been trained in that, right? Nobody's business is different. A business is a business. It just depends on what industry. And I wanted to comment based on what you just said, right? So it's not always that that people pay for, you to come in and fix their problem. What you're paying for and what they paid Dan Cricks for and all of us for at one point, right, is the 30 plus years that we've had getting our skills, knowing what to do, when to do it. And it's, I think there was something going around on Facebook where, it's like, I need to fix, a hinge. And the guy's like, how much are you going to charge me for that? And he's like, yeah, it's my 30 years and all my tools and all my time. And, it's kind of that same thing. But when it comes down to people's businesses are different, they're not. And look, the more you can make your business different, just like Mike said, it's going to do better probably than anybody else. I take my restaurant, for example. It was a Japanese steakhouse, and you all have that picture of the Benihana in your mind when you walk in and you hear the music playing and so on. Well, when you walked into our place, we're playing all the up-to-date music. We had, a rockin' bar and happy hour. I mean, we just totally turned the tables, and that's I believe why it went from 0 to 6.5 million, because you come in expecting one thing, you get something totally different, and then you get all the cute little girls for happy hour and all the guys follow, and and they have an experience. And when it comes right down to it, it doesn't matter what business you're in, everybody wants to have an experience. They want to go to this office or to their neighbor's house or whatever, and they want to tell people about what happened to them yesterday, last night, that was out of the ordinary. So the more that you can do that in your business and have people talk about it in a positive way, you're going to make more money than anybody else. Doesn't matter whether your business is different or not.
Hey, Becky, real quick, Craig, I got to jump in because Becky was kind enough to invite me to her restaurant when I was out there speaking. And Becky, you didn't mention like all the NFL players that used to have. I mean, I when I was there, I remember you introducing me to Hines Ward.
Right.
Yeah, you were like, just, hey, Mike, go meet this guy. And I remember walking out, and all their like Lamborghinis were sitting parked outside your restaurant.
Very
It
cool.
was amazing. Yeah, it was really, really fun. I'm so glad you remembered that. Yeah.
Dan Cricks, you had a question. You had something to say.
Yeah, just real quick. You mentioned have a different experience, a really fun and exciting experience. I'm just curious if Rochelle was able to create something like that for her gynecologist client.
Yes, part of it was an hour thing that made him different was that he guaranteed how long he was going to spend with each patient. Not that he was going to use a different tool, but right? Thank you for laughing.
I had a family law attorney who guaranteed that she would return a call within 24 hours, or she would return one billable hour, and nobody did that, and that just separated. She had a 5-point guarantee too, and that was just 0.1. And everybody said, you can't do that. You can't guarantee results. She goes, I'm not guaranteeing results. I'm guaranteeing that I will return the phone call within 24 hours, because the number one pain point of someone going through a divorce is I need to talk to my attorney, that sort of thing. So,
yep. Same thing with the doctor, right? They felt like we even wrote a book for him called Doc, Please Listen. And it was all just about, because nobody's listening. And so he guaranteed that he was going to sit there and listen to you. He would choke me when he came out of the room and go, oh my gosh, you should have heard this story today. But it made sure that when he was actually diagnosing as well as prescribing, he knew everything about the business. But back to, this money concept and making it, one of the best stories that I heard from Dan was, he goes, hey, when you go to the bank and you make the deposit, did they ask you, how long it took you to make this money? Did they ask you, was it hard? Did they ask you? No, they just take the freaking money from you, right? So at the end, right, it's number one about asking for what you're worth, making sure that you don't have any of these money things that are stopping you from getting what you deserve. Charging what you're worth. I have to say that I also have an addiction to football players. So I did go to Becky's restaurant. I'm hoping to see, Franco Harris. Oh, Jesus. He was not there, but she also charged more than Benihana's, right? And they charged more because of the great experience. Mark, you said, hey, did you get to go to Becky's restaurant?
I did not. I didn't have the chance.
Mark, you had your hand up?
Yes, I'm glad that Rochelle brought up the getting what you're worth and, charging what you're worth, because I think a ton of people struggle with that. And you hear it all the time. I've gone through it. And then what exactly is it that you're worth? I think the most liberating thing that I learned from Dan was, people think, what should I charge? What's the industry standard of what everybody charges? And then one up it. No. What is the value to that person? What is the value to the buyer? When I thought about that, I'm like, wow, I had a course that I wrote for DJ entertainers on how to grow their businesses. And I'm like, okay, this is a course in a box. It cost me $30 to print. What should I charge for this? Should this be a book? Should I, sell this for $100, whatever? No, if they get one client that they didn't get otherwise, they'd make anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 from that client. So I said, okay, this course is now $1,500. That was the most liberating thing that I learned from Dan was, don't think about what to charge. Think of what is the value to that user, to the end buyer. I hope that helps, but I'm glad you brought that up, Rochelle.
Yeah.
All right. I love this topic. We have to take a break. We have a message from our sponsor. We'll be right back.
This episode of The Most Incredible Marketing Show Ever is sponsored by Mike Capuzzi. Discover a strategy that transforms everyday business owners into trusted experts using the power of having your own book. Turn into a published author without the traditional publishing hassle. Read Mike's new book, The Ultimate Competitive Edge, for free at mainstreetauthor.com/edge. That's mainstreetauthor.com/edge. Now, back to the show.
All right. So this is a great topic. I wish we could be on it all day. But one of the things that this trigger talks about is speed to money. And some people believe that it takes a long time to make a lot of money or a long time to be successful. So, Ben, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and to kind of repeat what some others have said, we come to these ideas about money because of family of origin, because of our cultures we grew up in, because of the current business climate and whatever we're doing. But the key to change that is to surround yourself with new communities, with new people that have this other mindset. So if you can find some like-minded entrepreneurs, business owners, that was the whole impetus behind the local chapters that we all led, which is to just get people who have a different approach in your line of sight, people you can bounce ideas off of, whether that's joining a mastermind group or getting a mentor, just needing other voices to help with that, because it's really tough to do as an island. I know just from our mastermind groups that we've had, there are things that I will do faster because I know I'm going to get asked, what did you do this last week or this last month when I see you guys? And so there's, I think definitely it helps to have the speed when you can be around people that you're going to need to answer to, so you're going to take some kind of action so you can report on it. And also what I've found is in being in these mastermind groups and going to events, looking around and just seeing that these are well, I was going to say normal people, but then I took a look at the screen. But that these are people who, just have the same number of hours in the day and aren't, extremely gifted, and they've done something in their mindset that's helped them. So I can emulate that, and I have, models of like, hey, if Dan Cricks can do it. So can I. So I think I'm gonna have you start setting my hourly rates too. I like what you were doing with that attorney. And Rochelle, I'm gonna start shopping at Costco with you. It's gonna up my Costco game a lot. I think it's gonna help with my mindset.
That's funny. Joe, rapid success models. What strategies or concepts or things can help people go from nothing to something? I mean, what are some of the examples that you have?
I think the thing that I find as an example is when we previously talked about goals and setting up where we want to be at the end of the year. We're in, some people just look at this and go, well, wait a minute, I'll never get all this done. So I look at it and say, let's take at least one item and let's try to get that going. And it can be a simpler one, because what it also does for the person, the business owner I'm working with, is gives him more confidence. If we got this working and he's successful and his sales are increasing, and as we mentioned here earlier about pricing and so forth, we take a different approach on the product if there's a lot of competition. Basically, though, once he's got one rolling, say, let's take on the next one. Let's not take on 3 or 4 at once, but let's get those rolling. And then that way, he's going to have more confidence when he goes to number 2 and goes, yeah, I know we can do this, right? And that's, I think, the important thing. It's that mindset. It's giving them the confidence that they can do it. And if it means it's one of the easier, most, say it's a bunch of products they have, the easiest, maybe least expensive one, but they don't sell a lot of, then it changes and they're starting to sell more of it, then they can move up and keep going after all the others. So that's kind of how I look at it.
Very good. So part of this trigger of radically changing beliefs and limitations is about redefining your money mindset. So we kind of talked about that, but talk about some strategies that you've used or that someone successful that you've worked with has used. Mark, let's start with you.
Well, in the previous episode, we talked about like Parkinson's law, right? So to get things done fast, we talked about how does that go? Something like the time for a project, a complete project expands for the time allotted.
Right.
So I believe that money is in a similar way. Maybe I'll call it Imperial's law. I believe that income expands to the amount you need. I remember one of my first apartments was like $650 a month. And then I remember buying my first house and the mortgage was $1,500 a month. And I'm like, how in the world is that going to expand to that? And what I learned was miraculously that year, my DJ business like exploded in revenue. How did that happen? I have no idea. Maybe they could make a movie like The Secret about it, but it just expanded. And I think it is definitely just in your head, a lot of the limitations that people have around money and what they can charge. And by sticking to things like what's the value to the person, not what's the industry norm, is one of the best ways to approach that. And another thing that I always say is if I can deliver value to the world that's 10 times to 100 times more than what I ask in exchange, now how much of a better world would we live in if we all lived under that principle?
Very good. Dan Cricks, how do you redefine your money mindset, or what have you seen out there?
Well, I'll tell you something that comes to mind for me is sometimes you have to make some bold moves and change things. For example, I had a gentleman a number of years ago who was very unhappy with his job and how he was getting paid. And I asked him, I said, why don't you do this a little bit different? He goes, because no one in the industry does that. This is how everybody does it. And he was unhappy that he was having to take on clients that he didn't want, that he didn't make a lot of money with. And I gave him an idea, and he said, oh, I can't do that. Nobody does it that way. And I said, how about if you do this? He pushed back big time. I said, how about if you use this model with those clients you really don't want anyway? So if they say no, what have you lost? And so I convinced him, and he named 5 clients. He went back and did it, and it worked. And he made more money, 5 to 10 times more money than he would have the other way. And all of a sudden, those clients weren't such a pain in the ass, okay, because he was making good money. And then he changed his whole business model to do that. Totally different in the industry, totally different. But his income grew tremendously because he quit doing it the other way. And the only down thing to that was about 6 months later, we were at a Dan Kennedy Renegade Millionaire event, and Dan was asking people about wins from when they were there the last time, and he stood up and called me out and said, thanks. The only thing was I didn't get paid anything for that. It was just some friendly advice I was giving him, but he went and did it because it was risk-free. I showed him how to do it risk-free, and he changed how he operated in the business, and he made a lot more money.
Awesome. Mike, do you have an example of redefining your money mindset?
Actually, not personally, Craig. I was never, money was never an issue with me. I would say, more about belief in self was more the issue. So, that's part of this, right? Changing beliefs and limitations. So, since we're all former independent business advisors, we all would be on stage at our own little, local meetings. And I can remember very distinctly, because I was one of the early ones, like with Dan Cricks in 2006. I can remember being in front of that room, even though I had already been in business for 6 or 7 years, and it had accomplished a lot in corporate America before that. Thinking like, who am I to be up in front of this group leading these folks, right? Even though we were certified by Dan and Bill and all that good stuff, there was still this limiting belief, and it just took time. I'll tell you, I think one of the biggest keys, and it's not like any big revelation, is I'm a voracious reader. And I just, every time Dan would recommend a book, whether it was Stuart Wilde, Napoleon Hill, Lee Miltier, whatever, on this idea of self-limiting beliefs, I would just read them. And that was a key to me. And it wasn't, it took me a while before I even really felt comfortable in front of the room with the local chapter meetings we ran. But I would definitely encourage folks watching this, if there is that, if you have these limiting beliefs, some of the greatest classic books can really help you with some very specific ideas and strategies.
Very good. Chuck, I don't know if we've heard from you yet, and I apologize, but what are your comments on limiting beliefs and redefining your
I have 2 things to say. You all won't remember this. In fact, I don't even remember this, but back in the 50s, Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile. Nobody had ever broken the 4-minute mile before. And as soon as he did, everybody who was a world-class runner broke the 4-minute mile. So when someone goes before you and does something, it can get that belief that you can do it too over the top. The second thing I found is almost as many people have as much fear of success as they do fear of failure. So when they get to a certain amount of income in their business, they tune out mentally and quit growing and quit doing other things. So I think it's our job as coaches to stop that, because they limit their self because their belief is, I have never made in my business $250,000 in a year, and now I've done this and it's September. What the hell am I going to do? I can't make any more money. I don't deserve it. That kind of attitude. So we have to guard against that as human beings, and as coaches and business consultants, we have to be sure our clients don't fall into that trap.
Awesome. Becky, what about you? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I run into this. I never really used to even address this at my mastermind group until I found out how many people have this issue. And one of the tools that I use that work the best with them is the 7 reasons why. Like, if you go 7 layers deep, asking the question, well, why is that important to you? Why is that important to you? Why is that important to you? By the time you get to the 7th level, it really ends up coming out why either that goal or making that money or whatever that thing is important to them. And once you find that out, and they're shocked most of the time too, to get to that bottom level. But really, when you get to that level, I find that is a turning point with them. And so I'm sure you can just Google it, 7 levels of why, and do that exercise for yourself. Why setting that money goal or any goal really is important to you. And then when they kind of veer off course, you can bring that back up again and work with them on, well, hold on your 7 levels of why you said this was the most important thing. And they're like, you're right. Sometimes they just have to be reminded. And the other quick story I'll share is Dan Kennedy taught a mentor of mine, and I went to see him speak. And one of the things that he did that was so impactful to me is he took out $100 bill and he waved it around on stage, and like, it was legit. It was $100 bill, and he just ripped it up, talking about money and mindset and the whole thing. And everybody in the audience was like, oh my gosh, it's $100, and like he made people legitimize that it was, and just how, how big an impact that can have on you when you're in a money mindset where you feel you don't deserve it or whatever that limiting belief is. And it was just such an impactful thing. And he brought it all around and said, look, let's make this, not matter to you. Let's make you more money than you could ever imagine. But I thought it was a great visual. I still remember it. And it was everybody in the audience, gave a standing ovation. I know Dan Kennedy had something to do with it because he wrote a lot of his copy and coached them.
That's great. Ben, any last words about limiting mindset?
Yeah, I think a lot of it in terms of, especially with money, can just be the way that you value your time. And so it's that move away from trading hours for dollars and defining kind of what the higher leverage activities are for you. Like Mark mentioned, selling what you're doing based on the value it brings rather than some kind of calculation of, well, it took me this long and so forth. So it's really just turning that around to look at the value you're bringing and looking for ways where what you can provide is something that's scalable too, where to serve 10 times as many people doesn't take 10 times your amount of time. You can really focus on the things that can grow and scale without you having to put in kind of a linear effort for that. That's, I think, one of the big factors in the phenomenon is finding what those leverage points are.
Awesome. Very good. Very great example. I want to finish with one thing that we know about Dan Kennedy is he never finishes a day without responding to or sending out a fax or something to bring in more money. So if there's a client that he hasn't responded yet, he sends a communication or a fax or something to that effect. And so my advice is to do something every day to bring in more money to your business. Simple advice, but certainly one I've adopted. So, hey, listen, everybody, this is the end of our show. Thank you for being here. Our guests, thank you for listening or watching the most incredible marketing show ever. We have new episodes every Thursday. And if you're listening and you heard someone on here that you want to connect with, their information is in the episode description, as well as you can get a free gift from them at mostincrediblemarketingshowever.com. And hopefully we'll see you on our next episode next Thursday. So thanks for listening. Bye
So long, everybody.
See you, everyone.
Thank you for joining us this week on the most incredible marketing show ever. New episodes are available every week on Thursdays. To receive a free gift pack from our expert panelists and get access to show notes from previous episodes, be sure to visit our website, www.mostincrediblemarketingshowever.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button and click the bell up in the right-hand corner to be notified of future episodes so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, if you found value in this show, we'd appreciate you clicking the like button and leaving a comment on what big aha you got during the show. That's it for today's episode. See you next week.